In this video, we're going to take a look at the new Zapier integration into AlleyTrak. And so this integration is really intended for receiving new order information and sending it to a tool like Google Calendar for syncing with an external tool. So if you're logged into your AlleyTrak admin panel, you can go over to settings and app settings. And within app settings, you're going to see a new control here for the Zapier new order integration. And by default, this is going to be set to disabled. You can enable this, and then you need to define a Zapier Webhook URL endpoint. And this is something that you will configure when creating your Zap in Zapier. And we'll walk through an example configuration that I have, and really the recommended integration route to handle like creating and updating events long term. So in my example, I have this created here. I just want to walk through an example of what this looks like. I have our AlleyTrak demo account pulled up where the integration is enabled, and then I have my Google Calendar pulled up here for September 20th, and we'll go ahead and create a reservation for this. So I'm going to go ahead and change my event date here to September 20th, and then we're going to go ahead and book an event. Now we'll do let's do an event actually at 12 o'clock. And then we'll go ahead and continue, just review, everything looks good. I'm not gonna fill out any questions, continue. There's our customer contact information, and then we'll go ahead and click to confirm our booking, and we're ready to go. So now we can go over to our Google Calendar, and we should see that that event is pulled in, and that's great. Just pulled in just now, so that's awesome. We can see customer's name, Chris Bailing, our order ID for that booking, and then the event is at 12 o'clock, and then again our order ID just for reference. Now, we do pass through the location property based on the Zap configuration for this, and I would recommend configuring this way. This way allows AlleyTrak, or the Zap rather, to identify the booking and potentially delete it if you create a new booking or a modified version around the same order ID. But we can see customer name, email address, phone number, event details, what lane are they on, and then there's a note here saying, hey, you really should not try moving this reservation in Google Calendar or deleting it. That does not sync back to AlleyTrak, so this is really a one-way sync, and any changes should be made back in AlleyTrak. So we'll go ahead and close that dialog. Now, going over to Zapier, this does require the premium subscription for Zapier, which you can get set up for, I believe it's like $20 a month for the subscription service. It includes like 750 webhook notifications that can go through. And so I have this configured. We're using this Webhooks by Zapier. This is, again, their premium subscription level web flow that it can accept. And essentially here we are getting a webhook. So let me kind of jump into edit mode and we can take a look at how this is configured. So we have this, let's go over to our setup tab here, and then we'll just kind of continue through. So again, we are doing a webhook type of application. It is going to do a catch, which is receiving that webhook notification from AlleyTrak. The way we've developed this, anytime a new booking is created, it's going to hit that Zapier endpoint and give you the data needed to create this event. So we're going to do a catch as opposed to something like retrieving it from a poll, which is how you could previously do this through the AlleyTrak API. So continuing through configuration, part of a child key, we don't need to worry about this. The object that is being sent over to Zapier is the entire payload for this booking. And then test, this is really just going to give us that payload that we need to use to communicate to. So we'll leave that there. When you get into this configuration, you should get a URL endpoint from Zapier, which is what you would place into AlleyTrak for that endpoint. Now, continuing through, the next 2 or 3 steps actually are, well, that's not accurate. The find event step is going to go through and do a search in your connected Google Calendar, and it is going to do a search for a specific string. So if we go into configure, we are looking at that search term. We're going to use that location property, which is our order ID : and then that order ID value. It's going to look for any event you have in Google Calendar that has that specific criteria, and it's going to get that calendar event ID. And so pretty straightforward to go ahead and configure. We didn't need to do anything advanced on this process. And we can see like when it does find an event, we can see that ID value, which is referenced in this delete event action. So the next step we do here is we go through and create the event. This is another app, Google Calendar, and then the process we want to take, or the action, is create a detailed event. There is an option to do a automated event creation, quick add event. I'd recommend doing this create detailed event. It gives you more control over the properties that get passed through. And then if we go into our configure, you have the ability to configure what email address or what Google Calendar that's going to get sent to. And then the properties I have defined here is the summary, the description, the location property, and then we have our start time, and then we have our end time getting passed through, and then you can pass those into Google Calendar. Now, the time that we're passing these events over to, the start time and end time, is based on UTC 0, and so the conversion should already be appropriate for you. The time zone calculation that AlleyTrak does based on your time zone to UTC 0 should automatically be accounted for. But if you do find that the time zone is not mapping correctly, do let us know and we can take a look into it. Otherwise, you can modify this by using like a +1 or -1 to get the appropriate time zone if for any reason that is inaccurate. Other settings here are all out of the box and we're not really modifying those to any degree. And then there's a test option, which we don't need to do at this point since this is already configured. But when you go through and do this catch hook, you'll need to configure it in AlleyTrak once you get the webhook URL. Go in and book an event, then you can hit test and review that data coming through from AlleyTrak, and then also review like your downstream connections into this Zap. So then the next option we have here is just this filter condition. It's going to determine if we do this delete action. And so it's not very complicated by any means. We are checking to see, did we get an event calendar ID when we did that lookup, and said, was there already an event for this specific order ID? And if the answer is yes, and it exists, we're going to go ahead and do a delete. And we're going to delete an event based on that Google Calendar ID. So when we look at that configuration, it's going to find that ID and then delete it for us. And this is built this way to allow you to update reservations over time. If you're editing them to the AlleyTrak admin panel, you're going to create a modified version of an event. We want to delete that original version for you in your Google Calendar and sync through the newest version of that order so you have that accurate. You don't have duplicate events listed in your Google Calendar. Overall, that is all that is required for configuring it. Now, when you go to create a new Zap for this, there are a few processes that you'll need to work through. As part of that, it's just configuring that webhook in AlleyTrak, testing it, create a booking in AlleyTrak, review that data, and then map it up appropriately. But this is the recommended workflow, so you can make sure that you keep sync with modified reservations over time. And if you have any questions about configuring the Zap or the API in general that we are using in AlleyTrak to send this data to Zapier, feel free to reach out. You can schedule a support call, send an email, or use the AlleyTrak support chat at the bottom right of the admin panel to reach out and go over any questions that you have. Thanks so much for your time. We'll talk to you later.